Wow, more bad news for Terence "Bud" Crawford. According to Team Porter, it looks like the negotiations for a fight between Crawford and Porter have now officially met its end and broken up. We'll listen to what Porter had to say. I'm gonna give you my thoughts in this video. Stay tuned. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing. Make sure you smash the like button. Also subscribe to my channel for the latest and greatest in boxing. If you love what I'm doing, stop and hit the like button. Subscribe if this is your first time hearing the voice or you have not subscribed to the channel already. I drop daily content, all things boxing, some UFC. I give you guys the latest and greatest. And you should enjoy the channel if you're into boxing. So make sure you guys do that. Let's jump into the content. Kenny Porter did a recent interview, link in the description. And without further ado, roll the clip.
Kenny, what is next for Shawn? I know the Terence Crawford battle was spoken about a few months ago. Was that ever close at all, or was that just more talk than anything?
Well, it never got any further than, we on multiple occasions, myself, Shawn, had conversations. And with our advisor, we've had conversations that we wanted to fight. It never got any further than going to Bob Aaron's office and saying, "Hey, Bob, we're here to make the fight." And Bob talked to us and he said, "Well, I'm not going to make an offer today." And I said, "Well, can you give me a ballpark of the offer? What direction are we going here?" And he said, "Well, we're not going to make an offer today." And then it just ended. They never pursued it. And now I hear that Shawn is no longer the mandatory. He's been dropped from the #1 spot. Someone else is in the #1 spot now. And no matter how you look at it, you don't need to take my opinion on it. If it was a mandatory situation, if it was a situation where we should have been in a position to fight the guy, we told the guy we wanted to fight him. We told his promoter face to face we wanted to fight him. Why didn't they make the fight? They don't want to fight. There's no way around that. They just don't want to fight. And as far as we're concerned, we can't try to make you fight us. You don't want to fight us. Shawn is getting ready now. He's training. And we should be, in the ring, back in the ring in the next 8 to 10 weeks.
One name from the UK.
So you guys heard it yourself from Kenny Porter, who represents his son and himself, Team Porter, manager, trainer of Shawn Porter. And he basically told you guys what I told you. But it's good to hear from the horse's mouth. Kenny Porter said that he told Shawn Porter that Shawn Porter, well, actually, let me break it down like this. Shawn Porter also has an interview as well, a recent interview, and he said they're on the same page. What Shawn Porter is saying and Kenny Porter is saying match up. Shawn Porter, in his interview, he said that people on his team, his dad and different people on his team were saying, "Hey, don't let one fight or one person, because it can't get done, stall out your career. You got a family, you got kids, you got a wife, So at the end of the day, you got to keep it active, keep it moving. If the fight can't happen, then it can't happen, but don't stagnate your own career," which is great, sound advice. If you guys have followed my channel for some length of time, you'll remember I had this same exact advice for Amir Khan. If you guys remember, Amir Khan, he wanted to fight Floyd Mayweather really bad. And he almost developed like an obsession for fighting Floyd. And then the fight didn't happen. And then Floyd ended up fighting Maidana twice. And Amir Khan he was supposed to fight Devin Alexander earlier. And then the fight got scrapped. And he later fought Devin Alexander. But he just had a lot of dry spells in his career around that time chasing Floyd. And then it never worked out. Ultimately, he started trying to chase Pacquiao too. That fight didn't happen. They were constantly saying the fight could happen in Dubai and whatnot. He didn't get Floyd or Pacquiao. Then he got desperate, moved up in weight and fought Canelo and got destroyed with a single punch. So, it doesn't, as a business, doesn't make sense to reek of desperation and or let one fight or the absence of one fight stagnate your career. A person, in my opinion, who did it right is Errol Spence. Errol Spence wanted the Kell Brook fight bad. He let you know he also wanted the Keith Thurman fight. He has gotten at least one of those fights, but during the process where he was hunting down and going through the rankings, Kell Brook was fronting him off and saying he's the new Jeff Lacy 2.0. Errol Spence stayed to the game plan, beat the Bundus, beat the Algiris, and it became undeniable that he was the number one guy, the number one mandatory, and Kell Brook had to fight him. Same thing with Keith Thurman. There was a point in time where Errol Spence was actively pursuing Keith Thurman, but at the end of the day, Keith Thurman was saying, hey, he has to do more, get a belt and this and that. So the fight never manifested. Nonetheless, Errol Spence did not let his career fall by the wayside chasing just Keith Thurman. And now it's easy to see that Errol Spence is the cash cow. Hey, stop that cap. Man down. The big fish in the division. So it is proof that you can't let any one fight hinder your career. Errol Spence didn't do that. He just kept trucking and getting the Lamont Petersons and eventually, fights like Kell Brook and Mikey and Shawn and the fights that he could. And he didn't worry about only chasing Keith Thurman down. So I think this is great advice for Shawn Porter, bringing it all back in. I think Shawn Porter, if the fight with Crawford can't be made for whatever reason, you got to move on with your career. You're a fighter in your 30s, whatever age he is, 30 something, and the show must go on. Now, I believe Kenny Porter and what he's saying. He didn't throw or bash Bob Arum. Like it wasn't a disrespectful interview or anything. And you listen to what Kenny Porter is saying. He said he went to Bob Arum's desk. He lives in Vegas, Kenny Porter, and so does Bob Arum, or Bob Arum's offices, top-ranked officers, are also in Vegas. And he just told you in the interview that he went to the top-ranked desk and asked Bob Arum directly, and Bob Arum looked at him and said, I'm not prepared to make an offer to you right now. And he was like, well, we don't want to string this along. And he said, hey, I'm still not prepared to make an offer today, right? So Kenny Porter believes that negotiations really didn't get all the way started. He said he mentioned to his side, Al Heyman, that they want the fight. And then clearly after that point, he went to Bob Arum's offices and nothing was able to shake. He said the negotiations never really went anywhere. We can't force a guy to fight. And if they don't want the fight, they don't want the fight. So, we move on. Very bad look for Bud Crawford's resume and career. Everyone knows that Bud is a top talent skillfully. He has done some things at 135 and 140. He was undisputed. You're in a new division. It's a brand new division. This is what I feared for Bud Crawford. And I told you these fears in my videos, through my works, through my art, through my channel for years, that Bud was going to ultimately, Ego Stradamus strikes again. I told you that Bud Crawford was going to eventually get to this point. Top ranked, this is not 10 years ago when they had, Pacquiao, Marquez, and Jesse Vargas, and Brandon Rios, and Mike Alvarado, Ruslan Provodnikov. They literally have zero apt, realistic, reasonable opponents for a guy like Terence Crawford. They were talking about the Mean Machine fight, and then it happened. He already fought Benavidez. Jeff Horn, he already beat him. For some reason, Jeff Horn was given the Pacquiao opportunity instead of Crawford. So this has just been an ongoing thing where Crawford, his name has been linked to bigger fights like, let's say, Manny Pacquiao for 7 years, and he hasn't got it. They both last year and this year, Crawford's team told fans that Crawford was in negotiations or close to fighting Pacquiao. One time it was in Qatar. Last year they said 2020 was in Qatar. And this year they said the same thing, but in Abu Dhabi. Both years, Terence Crawford, training or not, was denied both of these fights, and the fights fell apart. Bob Arum has since done interviews and said the Abu Dhabi fight is dead in the water. So to me, it just looks like Crawford is getting strung along, and I don't know if he enjoys it or if he likes it, but this is a repeat thing. Like, we have to analyze this. This is just a bad look. You look at all the PBC welterweights, every single one of them, the top guys I'm talking about, have faced each other. From Danny Garcia, he moved up from 40 to 47. At this point, he's fought the Adrian Granados. He's fought Errol Spence, his last fight. You know, he fought Robert Guerrero at the time. He fought against, who else? Keith Thurman, Shawn Porter. He's already fought Shawn Porter, same thing. Shawn Porter fought Berto, Keith Thurman, Errol Spence. Shawn Porter fought your Dennis Ugas. Errol Spence fought Lamont Peterson, Kell Brook, Shawn Porter, recently Danny Garcia, right? And more than likely, Errol Spence will fight either Pacquiao or your Dennis Ugas for his next fight. Meanwhile, Bud Crawford is the name that remains at welterweight, and for some reason, his team and promotion can't get him the significant fights that the fans are clamoring for. Again, Pacquiao, they've listed Pacquiao's name synonymously with Crawford for years. No go, non-starter for some reason. 1 minute Bob Arum last year said it was the CDC or the health advisors said because of the pandemic, we can't make this fight. But Errol Spence and Danny Garcia was made in a pandemic, right? So that pandemic excuse is already wore thin. We've seen Canelo come out and they said he did 70,000 plus seats in a pandemic. Canelo was fought 3 times in a pandemic. But Terence Crawford, he fought 1 time in the pandemic against a guy that was beaten at welterweight. His last welterweight fight was 3 years prior, like 2017 against Errol Spence. And that's who Terence Crawford is fighting. So Ego Stradamus strikes again. When I tell you and make these videos, people think I'm picking sides and being biased and stuff, but it continues to happen. This is just a bad look for Terence Crawford because no matter how talented you are, people are going to demand such a talent face other people that the world deems as talented. Now you have Kenny Porter and Shawn Porter basically letting you know that negotiations with Crawford never really got anywhere. They've stalled out, so the fight's not happening. Kenny Porter also told you that somehow, some way, Terence Crawford, his mandatory is no longer Shawn Porter, and Shawn Porter got bumped back in the WBO rankings for whatever reason and replaced by Virgil Ortiz. Very weird behavior. Now, even regarding Virgil Ortiz, you know, I'm not a psychic, but I don't see Golden Boy putting Virgil Ortiz in there with Crawford off of the Hooker performance. So we'll see. You know, I don't want to do a bunch of speculation on who Crawford will fight, but at this point, I think it's safe to say it's not Manny Pacquiao, it's not Shawn Porter, and I never thought it was going to be Errol Spence next, and I don't think it'll be your Dennis Ugas. So once again, you know, people, old media, they start crying because Crawford's graphics aren't represented on PBC shows or like an Errol Spence Garcia fight if they don't show Crawford's likeness. But one thing they're not focused on is the inability to secure the bigger fights. Again, name a PBC fighter that's a top welterweight, someone that you think is in the top 5 that is signed with PBC that doesn't have significant names in their division, right? Like Keith Thurman, he fought Pacquiao. His last fight was Pacquiao. He fought Shawn Porter, Danny Garcia, Luis Collazo. He has names, Robert Guerrero. But Terence Crawford, he's the only name that remains, and it doesn't look like it's going to improve anytime soon. So, you know, when I say I think Canelo is now number 1, see, people want to live in the past. I had Terence Crawford as my number 1 pound for pound, but things change as the sport evolves and as, you know, time goes on. Canelo, you know, he does play some games and strategic games and things like that, which we know. But even with that considered, you can't front that he has a good resume and he's winning his fights. You know, outside of the Lotta fight, the Mayweather fight, and I thought he lost the Triple G fight, he's won the other fights. And he's still fighting in some occasions, not like average Pilgrim, but other occasions he's fighting like a champion in Caleb Smith or Billy Joe Saunders or Danny Jacobs. These names, even if you don't feel like they're the best names for Canelo or the guys that give him the most problems, they're still better than the names that Crawford has been able to get at welterweight. I do believe that. So that's why I had to remove Crawford as the number 1 pound for pound. Not saying he's not skilled, but his team is not getting the fights that really solidify his space. You know what I mean? And it's unfair for Errol Spence to be doing heavy lifting and fighting top names, Mikey Garcia when he's undefeated, Shawn Porter, you know, when he's a champion, possibly fighting Pacquiao, you guys, fighting Kell Brook in his backyard of Sheffield. And then Crawford gets to fight Mean Machines and, you know, Kell Brook, who hadn't fought at the weight in several years, dropped Eddie Hearn and got a brand new trainer he's never worked with. And Crawford is going to get the ultimate credit for that. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So some of y'all got to keep up, catch up. It's my thoughts. Drop your thoughts in the comment section. We working. Are you tired of your YouTube videos not getting any views? Well, consider TubeBuddy. I've used TubeBuddy for years to scale up my YouTube channel. Now we're sitting over 200,000 subscribers. TubeBuddy is a browser extension that offers a ton of built-in productivity and time-saving services to take your channel to the next level. Use my link in the description to get started with TubeBuddy and level up your channel faster. We working.